Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, our guest today is Executive Director of the Alabama ACLU, Susan Watson. Also, the V-Team takes a look at prison reform at Tutwiler. And Speaker Hubbard's $1 million fundraising baby appeared in Lee County. Wonder what the canary was singing. All this and so much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we take a look at the tough issues so you have the hard facts. Welcome all. My name's Bill Britt. I'm your host. We're gathered here today with the V-Team, as usual.
Good morning.
Glad to have everybody. We survived Snowmageddon. You were out in L.A. I know you'll have a few stories to tell us about your getting back. Seriously, some important things happening in the state. Kate Anderson, who's been called Mike Hubbard's $1 million baby because she's raised lots of money for him. She was down at the grand jury in Lee County. What's your thoughts on that, Claire?
Well, I had heard that from a lot of reliable sources. And yes, she has been the gal that he has chosen, and Lieutenant Governor Ivey chose her, and a lot of people have used her throughout the last 4 or 5 years, and she's made tons of money. But what I will say is she is a mother of a newborn and a mother of an adopted child, and I can't imagine that she is not going to sing like a canary.
Well, it's pretty interesting. Also, Greg Wren showed up down there. Greg Wren is, we believe, put in the 23 words into the American Pharmaceutical Inc. bill, as we call it, so that they would get millions of dollars managing pharmaceutical benefits from Medicaid. Barron, you got any thoughts on this Greg Wren situation?
Well, people have said that he's been there a couple of 3 times to the grand jury. I think it's interesting that he's one of the ones being called back time and again. You know, Greg's decided not to seek re-election. You know, Reed Ingram is sort of the, it looks like the heir apparent to that seat. And you know, if I was Mike Hubbard and Kate Anderson and Greg Wren were spotted at the Lee County Courthouse during the same week, especially Kate Anderson, I think that removes any doubt about what's going on over there.
Is it unusual for a fundraiser to be taking this kind of heat, Jack?
Well, not when millions of dollars went through your hands and you made phone calls on the Speaker's behalf when he was chairman of the party, and since raising money for some of the people that have supported him in the House. I don't think it would be unusual to question her because she probably knows a lot.
Right.
What about the $38,000 bonus? She and other people like
Ross,
John Ross, and Philip Bryan.
I think it's outrageous. I've worked with a lot of candidates over the years, and I worked for a state party of Texas in 1984. We had a great year. Nobody even got a $1,000 bonus. I think it's outrageous to take contributor money and give a win bonus to the entire staff to the tune of $35,000, $38,000, $40,000. It's ludicrous.
It's egregious. I mean, that is hard-raised money, and it is a bad, I mean, they're bad stewards of people's money if you go handing out over $100,000 to staffers.
Well, it's not just that it's a bad decision to do that. I question the legality of those bonuses.
Right.
If I opened a PAC tomorrow, I mean, I think it's inevitable Governor Bentley's going to be reelected. If I open a PAC tomorrow and raise $500,000 towards Governor Bentley's reelection, and I spent $50 on his reelection and gave myself a $450,000 win bonus, I think everybody's eyebrows should go up and say, boy, that doesn't sound legal, that doesn't sound right. It's exactly what was done here. The numbers, the percentages are a little different, but you're giving bonuses, win bonuses, to nonspecific issues out of a PAC. Something is completely wrong with that, and if you look at the PAC rules, they don't permit win bonuses.
Well, and that's something we've looked at before, and I agree with you on that.
But it also, you know, think about it, the party was in dire straits after the 2010 election when Chairman Armistead took over. There was no money.
Right. Well, they got
And
that.
there was no money, according to Mike Hubbard, when he took over in '07, after Twinkle Kavanaugh had been chairman. He said the financial situation was pretty grave. He told me that personally.
Yeah, but think about it. When Armistead came in, y'all, there was this whole committee of 15 that have been talking about what Mike Hubbard had done with this money, and they sealed it, and they didn't let it come out. So this has been a rat that's been smelling and stinking for, almost 5 years now.
Well, I think it's going to come back and bite, and it's going to bite hard. Another thing that's going on in the House and Senate are these consolidation bills. They're bills specifically designed to put power into the hands of the very few. Barron, have you been following this?
I have. These bills stink to high heavens, and I hope they don't pass. I think one of them's already passed the House, or maybe a package of them has already passed the House. Essentially, what these bills do is consolidate all the power over every employee in the State House and other areas into the hands of two men, the Speaker Pro Tem of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of the House of Representatives. They have a majority of the appointments to this legislative council that's going to be formed. It's an absolute mess. If I was an employee in the State House, I would be terrified over this scenario here, and I hope it doesn't pass. It's bad, bad legislation.
Well, the employees are, very nervous about that, and it passed in the Senate on Tuesday. The House was not in session, but the Senate was, and they passed both of those bills by Senator Hawley, and they've both been transmitted to the House, but they haven't been taken up. They did not get taken up.
I mean, we're talking about displacing career employees who don't really have a philosophy or a party. They just work for the state. Why, if they're a good employee, should they be displaced or fired or put under some new authority and done away with? I think it's very unfair. There's a lot of institutional knowledge.
I think a lot of this started in the Senate when the current Lieutenant Governor, Miss Ivey, couldn't do her job, and she hired all these consultants to bring them in to preside over the Senate and trying to take Pat Harris's job away from him.
Well, she should have brought in a mathematician on that 18.
Trying to figure out a quorum.
Listen, we got to move on to Snowmageddon. Everybody in the state was affected some way, good or bad, by Snowmageddon. We've got some footage here we want you to take a look at.
Snowmageddon 2014. It all began around 10 a.m. Tuesday morning, January 28th, with what forecasters said would be a light dusting. But it wasn't. After 30 minutes of snowfall, more and more began to fall and stick. Children became stranded at schools. Drivers slid on the 1-inch thick ice. Motorists were stranded for hours on roads and bridges. And emergency workers panicked as 911 calls jammed cell phone towers all over central Alabama. Businesses turned into emergency shelters for the stranded. First responders and Alabama's National Guard worked countless hours to rescue people. Teachers and school staff stayed with kids and kept them safe and calm through the night, while many parents were stuck in shelters or in their workplace. Then there was the fun in the snow. Kids building snowmen, sledding, and enjoying their time off. Heroes emerged during this crisis, average people helping each other, doctors who walked miles to perform surgeries, and rescue teams who used social media. I was honored to be part of one of those rescue teams, and it was forever a life-changing experience. Now that we've weathered Winter Storm Leon, hug and thank those National Guardsmen. Hug and thank those first responders. Hug the teachers and school staff who kept our children. Hug your neighbors and friends, but most of all, hug your family. And thank the good Lord that they're safe and sound. For those who didn't make it through the storm, let's honor their memories by continuing to help our neighbors. From now a sunny Birmingham, Alabama, I'm Jonathan Barbie for the V-Team.
A lot of good came out of this. 11,000 children stayed overnight in the schools, and teachers were there, support personnel were there. I think kudos go out to our teachers, their support personnel. Also, the rest of the state workers, the EMS, the people that really worked hard through the night. You guys have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I personally know some principals over in the east part of Alabama on the Georgia line that stayed there all night with their children in the schools over in Talladega and Ellick City in that area. I mean, that's commendable. I mean, there are some heroic state employees and educators out there.
I foolishly tried to drive back from Atlanta Tuesday night. The weather conditions were disastrous. There were thousands of cars abandoned on the side of the road. The roads got so impassable, I eventually stopped and got a hotel room. But
since I can't walk, I sure can't drive, so I stayed in and drank whiskey with Claire on snow night.
Oh, I don't believe that for a minute. Listen, that wraps up this segment. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Our guest coming up next is Susan Watson, Alabama ACLU. Stay put. You're watching The V.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group. Here's what customers are saying about WeatherGuard Lifetime Metal Roofing.
The product is something with no maintenance and that I never have to worry about the rest of my life.
The price was very reasonable, we thought, and we were well satisfied with the installation.
Hello, I'm Robert Wells, president of WeatherGuard. We are a family-owned business and we will back our lifetime warranty for generations to come.
Come by our showroom on Alton Road in Birmingham. WeatherGuard Lifetime Metal Roofing, 533-7322.
I make sure to get your kids to school and home safe every day. I am AEA.
I make sure your child receives a healthy meal each day. I am AEA.
Thank you, AEA, for protecting our public schools and our futures. We are AEA.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Our guest today is Susan Watson, Executive Director of the Alabama ACLU. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Nice to have you. You're new to the state, aren't you?
Yes, I moved here from Florida, and I formerly worked at the ACLU of Florida.
Well, we're glad to have you here. I know that there are people who love the ACLU, there are people that fear the ACLU, and there are people that hate them. Hopefully you'll be welcomed here.
Thank you, thank you.
One of the big issues right now facing the state is prison reform. We don't have any, and we need a lot of it. Julia Tutwiler's been on the front pages of the news. What, if anything, do you think we can do to bring this change about?
I think there are many things that the state of Alabama can do, and I look forward to being part of the solution. The Julia T. Tutwiler prison is absolutely a symptom of the greater problem going on with the prisons in Alabama. We are at double capacity. The prisoners are on strike and not doing their work because that's the only way they have to peacefully protest the conditions in Alabama prisons.
Alabama prisons, we spend about $42 a day per prisoner. That's the least amount in the United States. How do we convince people, though, that we should spend more on the prisons? People don't want more taxes.
Of course they don't. And you know what? I don't blame them. But I think there are different ways we can get at the problem. First of all, I think we can reduce the number of people that we put in prison. We need to be smart on crime, not If being harsh on crime were the solution, then we'd have no crime in Alabama, right, because our penalties, our sentencing is very harsh. So that hasn't solved anything. So let's take a step back, look at the whole problem, and see how we can reduce the prison population. One thing off the top of my head is most of the people in prison are in prison for drug use or drug abuse. Why don't we, instead of incarcerating people and spending all that money, why don't we open mandatory treatment programs so that we can actually do something good? They can get off of their addiction, you know, learn how to manage that so they can be productive people in society. They can provide for their families and their children rather than shuffling them off to prison, warehousing them there, throwing a family into poverty, and removing a parent from the home. That's just one example of many, many possible solutions.
There also, some say, is a possibility of letting older prisoners that have served many, many years and are not violent out of prison. Is that a possibility as well?
Well, I think that that's something we should look at. The reason that we put people in prison is to take people off the street that are a danger to society. someone shuffling around in their 80s is probably not a danger to society.
Right.
So there are many smart ways we can look at this issue and come up with solutions that will keep us safe from the people that really do need to be in prison, and yet and still reduce the amount of money that we as Alabama taxpayers are spending. We've got to do something.
Right.
The prison system in Alabama is out of control. You know, sirens are going, the alarm is going off. If we don't do something together as citizens of this community, then we are going to lose the opportunity, and the feds will come in and we'll have to do whatever they tell us to do.
And that's something no one wants.
No one wants that. And I think that we can be a part of the solution and make sure that things, I would like to be a part of the solution to make sure good things happen.
We need to bring smart people together, sit them in a room, have them talk, and come up with something before the federal government does. One other issue that's a real hot button issue right now is the death penalty. Luther Strange, our Attorney General, has basically said he wants to put a drive-through outside of death row and speed up the process. You have some problems with that, don't you?
I absolutely do. I think that if we increase the speed of this process, we are at grave risk of executing innocent people. There are 4 people that have been executed in Texas since they sped up their process, that are probable innocents. People that after the fact, the evidence keeps coming forward, and we have found out that they are probably innocent. So that executing in the name of us,
right,
the state executing people in our name, I really want them to be sure that they're doing it correctly.
I think we do have a moral authority. I don't want the state committing murder in my name.
Right.
Now, I may be pro-death penalty in certain cases, but I'm terrified of making a mistake.
Well, the ACLU's position is that the death penalty is the absolute, harshest civil liberties issue there is. The ACLU is against the death penalty. So I just want to say that.
Right.
But I think if a state or a government is going to use the death penalty, and many states have chosen not to, we have to make sure we're not executing innocent people.
Right.
And we have had a number released from death row here in Alabama.
Well, that's a thing that we don't want on our conscience for sure. Real quickly, we have a bill before the House and Senate that will make, it's called the moral conscience clause, so that someone who is involved in health care doesn't have to provide a service if it goes against their moral beliefs. Could you, in the 1 minute, sum up your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that that's a terrible bill. For one reason, it will prevent many women from accessing the care that they need.
Well, there's a lot wrong with it, and there's a lot that some people say are right with it. We want to thank you for being our guest today and sharing your views, and welcome to Alabama.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Our guest today has been the Executive Director of the ACLU of Alabama, Susan Watson. You're watching The V. The V team will be right back. Stay tuned.
The V is sponsored by Ginger Barbie, Attorney at Law. And MediaWorks Communications, video production services for all your video production needs.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
Save on energy costs and protect your home with a WeatherGuard Lifetime Metal Roof. WeatherGuard metal roofs are produced by the best manufacturers and installed by our certified experts. WeatherGuard is family-owned and believes in honesty, integrity, and professionalism. Come by and visit our 2,000 square foot showroom on Alton Road in Birmingham. Be sure to ask about the Energy Star tax credit. WeatherGuard Lifetime Metal Roofing, 533-7322, WeatherGuardMetalRoofs.com.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Well, Susan Watson had some really
She had interesting things to say. There we go.
Jack.
I've been here the whole time. It was all that whiskey you drank over Snowmageddon with Claire.
And wine. No, excuse me, wine. Wine, not whiskey.
It was wine, Ginger.
Evidently something. Well, it's good to have Charlotta here, I think. Anyway, Susan Watson seriously had some great things to say. I know a lot of people don't agree with the ACLU down here in the South, but this death penalty thing is very serious business. Now, you've got some issues with the death penalty, don't you?
I do. I'm as against the death penalty as I am abortion. I don't see that in any situation in the United States of America that the death penalty is a necessary penalty. I'm avidly and extraordinarily against it. We have ways to deal with people that we're afraid of. We can lock them up. We can make sure they don't have any human contact. It's just not a necessary thing to go killing people. The ACLU and I don't agree on much, but we agree on that.
Well, I'll have to say I don't agree with either one of them.
Right.
I'm absolutely for the death penalty, the lethal injection, and the old yellow mama that we used to have here as well. There's no reason in my mind that a man should live or a woman on death row for 21 or 23 years as opposed to a child that might have lived here in a brutal murder of acts for 6 years. And we once again, I'm going to state, we pay more to keep these people on death row than we do per student, K through 12 in Alabama. That is outrageous in my mind.
Well, I think regardless of which side of the issue on, whether you're pro-death penalty or you're anti-death penalty, one important thing to remember, as Claire just mentioned, is that the cost for maintaining a person on death row is approximately $2 million per person of taxpayer dollars. The other issue I think you have to balance, whether you're pro or you're con with, is that for every 8 executions, there is 1 exoneration. So if you're going to have the death penalty, at the very least, the process ought to be thorough so that we're making sure that if you believe in the death penalty, you're not executing someone who is innocent. And that's one of the things that goes to the heart of the Attorney General's package, to have the 2 appeals processes combined, those first 2 that you get. Right. And one of the issues in Alabama is that the average attorney who represents a prisoner on death row is capped at $1,000 for that appeal process. And that's one of the issues I think that does need to be addressed, regardless of which side of the issue you're on.
Yeah, and you know, the average years to get this to go to the death penalty ultimately is anywhere from 12 to 8. It was 12 to 21. I think maybe it's now lengthened down to 18, but that's outrageous for justice.
Well, but you think about that, Claire. If you're the one person who gets exonerated because you're innocent, you are very grateful for the 12 to 20 years it takes in the process. I know that there are victims' families who feel otherwise, but certainly if you're the family of the exonerated prisoner,
okay, I'll give you that, but when you have documentation where the gentleman is on death row and he admits 100% in written letters that he has convicted this murder of this child and raped and all these horrific things, when they have admitted this in writing, I really don't think that they deserve to sit on death row for 18 years.
And we've had that happen. Last year, there was a man who was executed, who in 2008, he was convicted. And after his appeals processes, he said, look, I don't want to do it. I admit it. Let's get this over with. And he was executed in 2013.
But most people aren't going to take that route. They're going to try to stay alive as long as possible. I got to say, I'm in the middle on this one because I got to feel like we're sure. I don't have any problem with treating animals like animals. I'm not sure that I believe that, you know, we've got it figured out. But
well, here's the other issue, too. I'll say this one last thing, that Alabama has a very strange creature. We're the only state that allows a judge to overrule a jury's recommendation of a life sentence. And 21% of the inmates on death row right now are the result. They've got a death penalty.
Because the judge gave it to them over a jury?
Yeah, because the judge imposed that sentence over the jury's recommendation of life.
And these are elected judges?
Yes, these are elected judges. And so that's an issue that you have to take into consideration when you decide what your stance is on the death penalty.
The other thing, I mean, while we're on bad subjects, Julia Tutwiler Prison is a mess. Everybody knows it. Somebody suggested we bulldoze it, but who's going to pay the taxes to build a new one? So what's the fix here?
Well, you know, we're sitting here talking, we're against the death penalty. Okay, you cannot keep incarcerating these people and not have somewhere for them to go.
Right.
And you know, once again, this has been a boiling pot in our state of Alabama at least for 20 years. Somebody has got to take the leadership and fix it. And I think it probably will not be till 2015. I know that they have got several committees that Senator Ward and people have on prison systems and prison reform, but something has got to be done about this for the safety and for everybody in this state, honestly.
Well, I'm concerned that I looked at that committee. They have no defense attorneys or no criminal defense attorneys on that committee whatsoever. I mean, it's all the usual suspects. I mean, how's that going to work out?
I don't know. At some point, we've got to make a decision that we're going to treat people humanely whether or not they've committed a crime. I think that gets to my opposition to the death penalty, but even beyond the death penalty, once you've committed a crime doesn't mean every right you have checks at the side door. You are a human being with human rights, whether or not you're in prison or in an apartment complex or in a house on the rich side of town. You have the same dignity and human rights. Right now in Alabama, we are not treating people with that same dignity. I applaud Cam Ward. He seems to be the only senator out there. He's a voice in the wilderness crying out on this issue. I wish him luck. I hope people help him out and come to his aid and defense. But something's got to be done.
If they don't, then the DOJ is going to come in. I mean, Dostoevsky wrote one time that the degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons. And you have the Department of Justice who came in after a visit to Tutwiler and issued a 36-page opinion to the governor. You have Tutwiler listed as one of the number 7 prison on the top 10 worst prisons in America. I know that the Department of Corrections has instituted a number of reforms, but at some point, someone other than just Senator Cam Ward is going to have to stand up and say, okay, we need an immediate, extensive overhaul.
Well, I think that's right, and you mentioned they need to get everybody in from all broad spectrums, so criminal attorneys, defense attorneys, and everybody be at the table to fix an issue like this.
Well, and I've spent a lot of time with the Commissioner, Kim Thomas, and he's a great guy, and he's doing everything within his power, but he can't do it without any money. And they refuse to put the dollars into fixing this system.
Alabama's funny. They don't like federal intervention, but at some point, if Alabama won't answer the problem, won't fix it to the satisfaction of the 8th Amendment, which is what the DOJ has said has been violated here, then we can expect federal intervention.
Well, and we'll go to the very end of the cusp, and then we'll say, oh, we've got to take it over and handle it ourselves. We don't want the federal government to come in.
Well, we are the
We've done that
make-me
at plenty
state.
agencies.
We like to be made to do it. And we're just that way. We're kind of stubborn. All right, we got about 10 seconds. Anything else on y'all's mind today?
If I was a female, I would sing and do anything I could to avoid going to Tutwiler right now.
All right, well, on that brilliant remark, we are the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Thank you for watching.